Hello everyone and welcome to our Australian Open preview show. It's our third edition. We've previewed Wimbledon and the US Open, and great to be doing it in our own backyard. Darren Parkin is my name. Steve Quick from Ace Previews is alongside me, and he'll be the voice to listen to over the Australian Open, and his tips, of course, will go up daily on the Hub. Steve, nice to have you with us. It is the Grand Slam in our own backyard, or perhaps Novak's backyard.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's like Christmas, really, for sport and tennis lovers in particular in Melbourne, having a Grand Slam on your back door. It's fantastic. Hopefully the weather turns it on. It's been a bit of an indifferent couple of weeks of weather here in Melbourne, but hopefully we can get through with the Sunday start this year.
Yeah, that's right. Monday's supposed to be, I think, an iffy day, but we do have an earlier start, which obviously an aim to avoid some of the 4 a.m. finishes and the lengthy delays that we've had over the journey. Of course, last year we had Murray and Kokkinakis go deep into the evening when Kokkinakis was up 5-2 in the third. But reflecting on your favourite memories of Melbourne Park, is it hard to go past 2022? Not just the Barty party, but we had Australians in doubles finals everywhere. Kyrgios and Kokkinakis against Ebden and Purcell. You had, I think, Kubler and
Hijikata.
Also going around in that as well. And I think we had some mixed doubles action as well. Yep. So, that was a pretty big year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that was the culmination of Ash Barty's career, as it turned out to be. It looked like, after winning Wimbledon the year before, she wanted to kind of tick off that bucket list, win the title at home, and everything just seemed to align for her. I think in that tournament in particular, it was a fantastic result, and I think that's probably the most recent fond memory I have. But we could go back over many over the last couple of decades. But how about you? Is there any that stand out in particular?
Yeah, I mean, look, Nadal's been involved in some extraordinary finals.
Yeah.
Federer 09, Djokovic, the one that went to the middle of the night, and then Medvedev, obviously, where he came from the clouds to win that one a couple of years ago. Leighton Hewitt's deep run in 05, I remember as a young tennis fan, that was a really bold run. And when 𝗵𝗏 beat Federer in the semi and then Hewitt got through, we probably thought that was the better option for Leighton, and it probably was on reflection, and he won 6-1 in the first set in about 20 minutes, and then unfortunately 𝗵𝗏 got on top and denied us that Aussie slam that we had to wait 17 years for.
Yeah, I think that was one of those, you thought the stars were aligning for Hewitt a little bit that fortnight as well. I think he beat, was it 𝗪𝗡𝗪𝗪 in 10-8 in the quarterfinal in the fifth set. Found his way through to the final there, and it all looked good after, as I said, half an hour of play. But, Safin just too good there. And, Safin was one of those players who you just loved to watch when he was in full flight. But there were millions of Australians, I think, that night that weren't particularly thrilled to watch Marat bring his best through sets 2, 3 and 4. Yeah,
one of the last years where the Australian Open was played on the green courts before they obviously went down the bluer path now that we tend to see. Who's looked good in the lead up? We'll touch on the Aussies later, but obviously Demon, I know, beating Djokovic at this stage of a season, that's when he does tend to drop the odd match. But as much as it doesn't mean much for Novak, for Demon, it's a good boost of confidence.
Yeah, I think definitely for Demon, now into the top 10 as a result of his performances at the United Cup. And not even just the win over Novak, I think also to be able to back it up and beat Zverev from a set down as well, and what was a do-or-die matchup there, having lost the women's tie in that particular competition with Germany. I think when you look away from the United Cup in terms of the other players that have looked good on the men's side, Andrei Rublev won the title in Hong Kong. He's always around about the mark. When we talk about Grand Slams in terms of making the second week, making the semi-finals has been a different question for Andre. He's been one of those players who's probably been most impacted by the fact that we've had some generational talents at the top of the game for the past decade. But he's one obviously to keep an eye on. Looking to the women's, Coco Gauff, winning the title over in Auckland last week is one to keep an eye on. I think she's probably the key interest for me, I think, looking at the top of the market, but we'll have a look through the odds shortly.
Gauff, obviously the most recent Grand Slam winner as well, to sort of come in. But you look at Rublev, a quick count, 9 Grand Slam quarterfinals, and I think he would have lost half of those to Djokovic and Medvedev and players like that over the journey. And it's been the stumbling block for him, and we wait and see what does happen. That sort of transitions us into the men's market. So Djokovic, $2.14, always very short in Australia. By comparison, he was about $2.70 before the US Open, where he had some struggles in finals. But Alcaraz second favourite at $4.90, no surprises. Sinner overnight actually into 860, and then Medvedev 13. So I guess that's the question. Medvedev's now dropped behind Jannik Sinner in that pecking order. Is that fair?
It's a bit of a funny one. I think it's probably fair, but maybe not to the extent that the gap in the market suggests at the moment. I think when we look at Medvedev, for all his quirks and for all the, look, if you're going to be getting involved with Medvedev across the course of a fortnight, be prepared for a roller coaster. He's going to lose it at himself, at his coach's box, at the crowd. It's all going to happen. You're going to get the full experience, but he's won a Grand Slam. He's been to the end. He's shown that he can match it with all the players on the tour when he brings his best. Sinner, we've still got that question mark a little bit, I think. He's been able to make a couple of deeper runs now at Grand Slam level, but has, caught short a little bit, lost to 𝘃𝗍𝗫, I think it was, from a pretty strong position last year at the Australian Open. He's found himself around the mark, but hasn't been able to get to that final, and then hasn't been able to then be able to, put in a strong performance there where we can trust him, I guess, at $8 when we're looking at a fortnight worth of play. And I guess my worry with Sinner and looking at his draw is if he cops a fourth round against a Tiafoe or a Khachanov who's been able to make a deep run, I think they're probably the danger games for Sinner. I just don't know if $8 is enough for me to want to get involved, knowing that then there's probably an Alcaraz and a Djokovic further down the track as well, potentially.
Yeah, well, they're on the same side. Obviously, we looked at Djokovic. He'd have to beat potentially Sinner and Alcaraz to win the title. Some would believe, obviously, his two main threats. But, yeah, look at Medvedev. It took him a while to recover from losing that Nadal final, maybe over a year to recover from that in many respects, but made the US Open final and probably should have gone a set all in that final. Just missed some chances in the second set. And then once you go 2 sets down against Novak, that's the end of it. But he could have made things quite interesting in that final, and we might have been talking about him as having won that title twice. So yeah, maybe do you look at that and say, if I was even leaning slightly Sinner's way, I look at the price and go 13s on Medvedev. I'd rather have a piece of that.
I think that's the case with Medvedev. And you look at his draw, so you look at Sinner's quarter even, and to get out of the quarter, it's probably a Tiafoe or a Khachanov in the fourth round. It's probably Rublev or de Minaur in the quarterfinals. And then, if we look to Medvedev, it's not quite as strong through there. I think probably the danger is Grigor Dimitrov in his current form, which is something we probably weren't thinking we'd be saying a couple of years ago, with Grigor now in his 30s. And then this, to get out of the quarter, it's probably Holger Rune. So, I think when you're looking comparatively across best of 5, I think Medvedev matches up better against his opposition in his quarter than Jannik Sinner.
Yeah, and it is going to be fascinating looking at all that. Dimitrov coming off arguably a career best year. I think 2018 or 19 was a pretty strong year for him as well. So
he had a strong patch to finish. The Paris final and then backing that up, and breaking his title drought with that win, in Brisbane last week. It's been, as someone who's watched him obviously for over a decade, it's just been nice to see him get a run at it injury free. He's, we've seen him in recent years be able to go on a little bit of a surge and then be pulled up by a back injury or other issues. So it's nice to see him get that run, and now it'll be interesting to see with a decent draw as a relative seed, if he can make the most of it. Yeah,
fourth round or quarters a few years ago, he lost to Karatsev when he got injured in the match, and that really hurt him. In the women's market, so Swiatek, always favourite, 360, but she was shorter last year. We know, obviously, that Sabalenka went on that run, played that great final against Rybakina. Goff has almost made that a big 4 now. So Swiatek 360, Sabalenka 550, Rybakina 660, and Goff 750. How do you see that? I mean, Coco Gauff, is she now entrenched in that top bracket of maybe a big 4, if you will?
Yeah, I think so. I think it is a big 4 now. And when you compare to, a year ago, it probably was Iga at the top, and then you've probably got Sabalenka and Rybakina next, and then it was kind of quite a selection of players I think you could choose from there in terms of, who was going to be able to step up on their day and to be able to match it. I think that's fair when you look at the draw. I think the odds for Swiatek, I think when we look at it, it's a tough draw. She gets Sofia Kenin, who's won here. Yeah. A couple of years ago. Obviously, form has dipped significantly since then, but it's a tough challenge. And then either Danielle Collins or Angelique Kerber in the second round. It's not the easiest start to a Grand Slam for Iga. But I think looking to the others, I think, Rybakina probably maybe a little bit short, I think, compared to the others. I think if I was to be looking at the moment, I'd be going for Coco Gauff at the odds. But it's going to be a fascinating match. And there's a few players littered throughout the draw that can cause upsets on their day, and I'm sure if Iga sees Jelena Ostapenko across the court again, come, the middle of the tournament.
Yeah.
It's one of those players who, Ostapenko, you're probably not going to be trusting to win the whole tournament outright, but it's someone you don't want your outright to be facing because just what she's capable of.
Yeah, and she had a good couple of weeks as well. But yeah, Iga, I don't know, player of her standing, it feels like she should win an Australian Open somewhere along the way. Obviously, she's dominated the French and she's had some success in America as well. Do you kind of feel like it's a chapter she will tick at some point?
I think she will, and I just wonder with her game and looking across the course of the last couple of years, maybe she just needs weeks to months to find a rhythm, and then she gets a rhythm and she gets on a roll, and that roll generally comes through kind of the middle of the year, that clay season kind of coming into the start of Wimbledon. I think that's probably the patch for her, as we've seen, compared to, say, a Novak who obviously seems to enjoy coming to Australia fresh. He's going to be able to play for hours and hours, and he's, if he's fit, he's able to beat anyone. I think, she will tick it off at some point. Whether it's this year, I'm a little bit questionable at the odds, but I'm not going to be laying her. I think I'm just going to be keeping her safe at the moment.
Yeah, I'd agree with that for sure. And looking at some dark horses, and there are plenty of those. Naomi Osaka's won this title a couple of times. She returns, obviously, some time off the tour with motherhood and the like. Svitolina, very good comeback for her from same thing, obviously motherhood last year, and she's looked okay in the early part of the year. Then you've got Pegula, who's a bit like Rublev, and a bit of a quarter-final player, and Ons Jabeur lost 3 slam finals, hasn't always been super in Australia, but how do you see some of the dark horses?
Yeah, I think, and another one who's come back is Caroline Wozniacki, who comes in as another wild card here. I think looking at the dark horses and kind of moving beyond those kind of top 5, 6 in the market, one to keep an eye on maybe is Qinwen Zheng.
Yep.
I think she is someone who has all the tools to be able to match it with all those top players and is able to dictate and play on her terms quite a bit. Yes, that can come with some unforced errors, but just looking at her in the market, just at that slightly longer price around the $40 mark, I think, on the exchange at the moment on Betfair, might be one to keep an eye on. I think her odds are probably the ones that have stood out to me the most amongst those not named Swiatek, Rybakina, Goff and Sabalenka, so that's probably one to keep an eye on.
And as much as we talk about a big four, there have been a lot of other winners of women's titles in the last few years. We look at the Aussies now, obviously pretty deep in the men's draw. Nick Kyrgios out, so that's 5 slams in a row he will have missed now since his quarterfinal run at the US Open in 2022. More on Nick a bit later on, but Alex de Minaur, tricky start with Milos Raonic, who's hardly played of late, but can be a very dangerous player. de Minaur into the top 10. We'll go through some of the other Aussies. Alexei Popyrin, all Aussie first round, but then if he wins that, probably plays Djokovic. O'Connell has gone okay here in the past, got Darren, which is tricky. Jordan Thompson plays another Aussie before perhaps Tsitsipas. Did beat an injured Nadal coming in. Max Purcell, not a bad draw for him. And then maybe a somewhat vulnerable Casper Ruud in round 2. You never know. Vukic obviously playing Thompson, as we said. Kubler, good player, can be dangerous. Duckworth, we haven't seen a lot of him of late. He had a good year a couple of years ago and injuries got him. Hijikata's always fun. Kokkinakis is in the field, but potentially tricky matchup with Dimitrov in the second round. And then a couple of lesser knowns, Walton, McCabe, those sorts of players. I saw Walton in qualies last year and actually looked really good and then just fell short late. So good to see him there. But what's your summary of the Aussies, obviously with de Minaur seemingly the best chance?
Yeah, I think it's just nice to see there's a lot of Aussies in the draw, I think, first and foremost. And I think a lot of that has come down to those players kind of sitting in that kind of 60 to 100 rankings, being able to have success at challenger level across the course of the last 12 months, which has allowed them to boost their rankings to come in here and be a part of the main draw and not rely on a wild card. I think when you look through, as you said, it's pretty tough draws for a bunch of them. de Minaur's obviously the main focus. He should be winning round 1. The difference, I guess, here compared to a lot of previous years is de Minaur is the focus of Australia. There's no Kyrgios, there's no Barty, there's no one else really that's really commanding that attention at the moment. So it's all on de Minaur. So there is an added pressure component, I think, here. But I think when we look at him, it's the same question I guess we've had for de Minaur over a number of years now is when we get to the pointy end of a Grand Slam, does he have the weapons? Is he able to generate enough cheap points on his serve to be able to match it with the big players at the top of the tour? Yes, he's beat Novak in best of 3. Fantastic. He's been able to beat Zverev, in the lead up, but there's still some question marks, I think, across that best of 5, big stage, late in the tournament when all the pressure's on. Is he going to be able to match it? I think looking at his odds, I probably wouldn't be getting involved in him in the outright market. but he should be making the second week, looking at the draw that he's got. Of the rest, I mean, it's nice to see we'll have a couple of Aussies into the second round just because they're playing each other in the first round. Yeah. So we'll take that. We'll take the wins where we can. I think the one to look at, is an interesting matchup. Jordan Thompson, obviously was able to beat Nadal, albeit an injured Nadal in the lead up. If you can get through 𝗃𝗃𝗃 in the first round there, he beat 𝗬𝗂𝗃, I think, last year at Indian Wells.
Yep.
And 𝗬𝗂𝗃 isn't at his best at the moment. It hasn't looked 100%, and that's a tricky first round with Berrettini as well. So, if Thompson can cause an upset there and, take a top 8 seeds draw and just go on a little bit of a run, he might be able to make it into the second week. But I think of the rest, we're going to see, it's going to depend on who maybe ends up on show court 3, gets the full crowd, the raucous Aussie crowd behind them who can cause an upset or two. But I think of them, it's probably going to be de Minaur into the second week, would be the prediction, and then maybe Jordan Thompson if he can cause an upset.
Yeah, Popyrin had that great win over Fritz last year, and then fell to Shelton. He and Thompson, it's a lot of it's the case of controlling their, I guess, passion at times on court. They can get a little bit agitated, particularly Jordan Thompson by his own admission. So hopefully if he can settle into that sort of a rhythm, and on de Minaur we saw what Djokovic did to him last year in that best of 5, and he really flexed his muscles in that. 5 women in the draw. Daria Saville, she had that knee Rico, has been a player that's been top 20 and made 4th rounds in the past, plays Magdalena French, and then the winner of the tricky matchup, if she gets through that, between Garcia and Osaka. Olivia Gadecki, 2nd Australian Open in a row for her. Plays Sloane Stephens, who's a Grand Slam champ, but can be a bit up and down. Tomljanovic missed all but one major last year and then withdrew from that one with injury too. She'll play a veteran in Petra Martic. Taylor Preston, a good West Aussie talent, but Svitolina in round 1's tricky. And then Kim Birrell plays the dynamic, albeit at times unpredictable, Ostapenko. She has claimed big scalps here before. I'm trying to think if she beat Vekic maybe back in the...
She beat Kanepi, I think, last year.
Yeah, and then she beat Vekic maybe 4 or 5 years ago prior to injury. So, if I've misread that one, I apologise, but I think that's who it was a few years ago. Then she lost to Kerber, I think, fairly convincingly. Yeah,
it's a tough draw for it's a great opportunity for the 5, but it's going to be tricky. I think I think Saville's probably got the best chance of maybe making a run here. That Garcia Osaka round 2 potential. She plays well with pace coming from the other end of the court. If she doesn't have to generate it herself, she's going to counter punch and run all day. And Garcia and Osaka are players who can spray errors across chunks of their matches. So that would be an interesting one to watch with the crowd behind Saville, obviously. I think looking through the rest, Sloane Stephens, hot and cold, as you said, generally does bring a level closer to her best at Grand Slam level, which is the unfortunate part here for Gadecki. But it's a fantastic opportunity, and Gadecki's looked really good, I think, over the last couple of weeks in terms of the level that she's been able to produce. Tomljanovic struggled a little bit at the United Cup. I think looked good in patches and is still trying to find her way back. As you said, withdrew from the US Open second round, played some clay tournaments late last year, found a bit of confidence, but I think looking at that Kerber match, I think looking at how she kind of went late in that, you do have some question marks maybe there. But I think, Preston, great opportunity. Svitolina's tough though. She's not going to give you much on this stage. And Ostapenko, I mean, if I'm Kim Birrell, I'm hoping Ostapenko makes her way through to the Adelaide final and then plays a 3-hour match, I think, in Adelaide, and has to back up in Melbourne. I think that's going to be the hope for Birrell. But who knows? It's the thing with Ostapenko. As I said, her best can beat anyone in this draw, but her worst is significantly lower than her best, and you could get the full Ostapenko experience in the space of about 20 minutes. Yeah,
and potentially cause that level of distraction. But a lot of those players, Birrell, Saville, Tomljanovic, have had some poor luck with injuries, and good to see them getting those opportunities now. Now, before we get into some betting strategies, I'm going to send down, we call it rapid fire in the football version of this show.
Yep.
We're going to call them 5 first serves. So we've picked 5 of the biggest servers in the game, and we're going to fly them at you, and you're obviously going to have to, on instinct, return those serves. And what we're after is your first answer. So the first serve's coming from Mark Philippoussis, and the question is, will Nick Kyrgios play again?
Depends how his OnlyFans goes.
True.
Probably. Yeah. I think he played the final. He got to the Wimbledon final. I feel like him challenging Novak was enough for him. I don't think he gets enjoyment out of playing tennis. I think he's probably found that being injured and not playing tennis for the last year. I'd say 50-50. I'd say we're probably more likely to see 𝗵𝗺𝗪𝗏 in the main draw next year than we are Nick Kyrgios.
Yeah, I think that's a fair call, and I think he even mentioned recently that, if you're not passionate about it and then you're carrying pain of injuries, then it really does test that passion a little bit.
Yep.
Second serve comes from 𝗂𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃.
Oh.
Are Sinner and Alcaraz the only players that can beat Novak Djokovic? And I guess the counter question is, can they indeed do it? Like, the answer may be no, because they can't either.
I think they're probably the third person who could beat Novak is Novak himself.
Yes.
I think it depends on how he is fitness-wise. And look, probably a little teaser in terms of the betting strategies. Obviously just over $2 is quite short, but I'd be keeping an eye on that market across Novak's early matches in case there is an MTO or something that we need to keep an eye on. But I think they're probably the main two. It's going to be tough, I think, for a lot of other players in the draw. But maybe a Dimitrov or a Rublev or someone could pull out a surprise. But I'd be very, very surprised.
Sam Groth sending down the next serve. Owns the fastest of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Which of the 5 Aussie women goes deepest?
I have to say Saville, which is a really tricky thing to say because it's probably Garcia or Osaka in round 2. I think I'll be going with Saville there.
Milos Raonic, who's back in business here, he'll send down the 4th serve.
Yep.
If Naomi Osaka's career is not interrupted from here, will she win another major?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think she will. I think we saw before she left the tour or before she announced her pregnancy, you could tell that she wasn't enjoying her tennis and she wasn't enjoying everything that was involved in it. She seemed, whether it's the break or whatever it is that's done it, she seems to have a better mindset now. And I think she's obviously got all the talent and the tools. And I think when you look at this top level of the tour, if she can bring her best, I think she will be able to match it with everyone. I'm not saying this tournament, but I think, in the next couple of years that she should be right at the pointy end again. 5th
serve from the recently retired John Isner, who obviously very hard to break over the journey. Would have served to this gentleman, and it's a potentially sad one. We know that the end is near. Is it possible that the end has already come for Rafael Nadal?
I think we would see Nadal. I think we'll see Rafa again. I would be surprised if we see Rafa on anything other than clay again.
Yeah.
I think, and this is a decision that he maybe even could have made a couple of years ago to just focus on. He can get more than enough points just playing the clay season and maybe turning up and playing a Grand Slam here and there. But for his body and his ability, I don't think playing the other Grand Slams and best of 5 is great for his body at this point in time. But I think looking at it, he could maybe get another year or 2 on the clay and be pretty competitive.
Almost once he won that Australian Open, to get that second one, having lost so many finals, maybe then, I know he's a competitive beast, but maybe then it could have been, well, that satisfies that.
Yeah,
I can pick up a couple of French maybe if I keep the body intact and keep on rolling through that. We'll finish with some betting strategies. Obviously, all of your betting strategies and tips will pop up on the Hub and via our socials daily. But looking broadly, starting with the men's side, how are you approaching that?
I'm going to be keeping Novak safe. I'm not going to be laying Novak early on. Up on the Hub, I think it was early December, I got involved with Alcaraz and Zverev. So happy to keep those trades there based on they are in the same quarter. So happy to hold on to that at least for the first week, and we can maybe reassess a little later on there. Zverev does have a tricky first round matchup, which I'll be keeping an eye on because I'm assuming he'll go up quite short in the odds there. The other two from a trading perspective, as I said, I've talked. I can't believe I'm actually saying this because I haven't talked him down over the last couple of years. But Andrei Rublev's draw, I think, is relatively favourable, and makes an interesting trading spot. I think here, as I said, maybe I think it's de Minaur in the 4th round, which I think he could hold his own. I think in that matchup, and we know for all his quirks late in the tournament, he's doing a great job of making it to the second week of these tournaments. So someone just to keep safe there. And Grigor Dimitrov, I think, is another who, he sits in that Medvedev pocket of the draw, but has shown promise against Medvedev in the past. And I think looking at his tennis, particularly in Brisbane, and he's confident, he's injury-free. I think they're 2 really key things for Grigor. So I'd be trading around Alcaraz, Zverev, Rublev, and Dimitrov at the moment. On
the women's side, pretty even at the top, more so than we would have seen in the past. Swiatek's still favourite, but how are you playing that? Yeah,
I think if you were to pick one of the top 4, I think at the moment I'd be going with Coco. I'd suggested 𝗂𝗥𝗚 again in that December preview that she was probably the one to be backing there, and I'll be keeping her safe as well in a similar way to Novak. And from a trading perspective, I think Zheng is the one I mentioned before around that $40 mark. I think she could cause a little bit of commotion, I think, within this pocket of the draw that she's in, and should be able to make it through to the second week. So that would be the ones to keep an eye on. But I think the beauty, particularly with the outright markets on Betfair, is you can keep them up. You can have a look at them, while the plays taking place across the course of the fortnight. If you see Novak down 2-0, he was down 2-0 at the US Open, and we saw that significant drift in his outright price. You can jump on the Betfair exchange and place a back bet on Novak there, and if you think he's going to be able to come back and take it in 5 sets. So I think really keeping an eye out, injuries, heat, if there's going to be a hot day and players are struggling, it's really can pay off to be really reactive, I think, with the having the markets open, particularly for the men's and women's outright markets.
Invariably, Djokovic, if he drops a set, he drops the first set. I know when he won Wimbledon a few years ago, I think he lost the first set 4 times. When he made the US Open final when 𝗪𝗺𝗻 beat him, I think he lost the first set in nearly every match. So, yeah, you could look around that and think that if he was slightly vulnerable early, just see if he drifts a little bit and then get a better price, because he'll probably come back and win in any case. My only look would be the potential for an upset in the first round. You look at some of those first round matchups, Osaka, Garcia. I mean, Pliskova to a lesser extent against 𝗪𝗏𝗧, but she's a Grand Slam finalist on a couple of occasions. Berrettini and Tsitsipas. That they are some banana peels, if you will, matches that you could look at, and maybe they don't all go the way of the favourites. Maybe there's one upset somewhere amongst all of those. But we do look forward to, we'll do some live stuff down at Melbourne Park. We'll both be sort of venturing across there, so we look forward to getting a bit of atmosphere and touching on that throughout the tournament, and you'll catch all of Steve's tips up on the hub. But thanks for tuning in. What are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.